join me as I show you how to use 8/0, 11/0, and 4mm bicones in order to make these angel fan earrings. They are very simple, based loosely on herringbone with some extra beads in the interior. Remember, if you need any supplies, want to check out other colors of Potomac crystals, go ahead and look below the video in the description. We put a link there for you to get back to the website and get all the information that you need, exact counts, colors, etc. Gather up all your materials and get ready to make these angel fan earrings. To make the angel fan earrings, you're going to be using 4mm bicones, 8/0 C beads, and 11/0 C beads. I'm using both Miyuki brand, and I have here a ear wire and also a wire guard that we're going to be connecting to. This is going to be a little bit of herringbone stitch with a twist going in and adding some beads in between, changing up the top as well. I have here a size 10 beading needle on some green size 8 dragon thread. And the first thing I've done is put a silver stop bead at the base of my thread, leaving about 2 inches. I'm going to begin with the center section here and the 4 rows of my ladder stitch. Pick up 2 of your 11/0s, or sorry, 8/0s, and 2 more 8/0 C beads. Starting at the stop bead, but not sewing through it, you're going to go back through beads number 1 and 2, coming out prior to bead number 3. This is going to fold those beads right next to one another so they sit side by side. To add a 3rd row on, go through beads number 3 and 4 and bring your needle out. Once you bring that needle out, go ahead and add your next 2 beads, beads number 5 and 6. So back into the top of beads number 3 and 4, where your thread is currently coming out the bottom, you're sewing in the top. That'll make beads 5 and 6 lay right next to. So back up through beads number 5 and 6, and then we're going to add beads 7 and 8. 7 and 8 are going to get added in the same fashion, going back through 5 and 6, and then once again going down through beads number 7 and 8. This is going to be that starter 4 rows of 8/0 C beads, creating that 4 rows of 2 high ladder stitch. Exiting the 4th row of your ladder stitch here, we're going to take our thread and needle and go back up through bead number 7 toward the top. So we're skipping over the side of bead number 8 and going up bead in number 7. You will slightly see a little bit of thread on the side right now, but when we go back in and do the sides here of the fan, you will not see that anyway. From here, we're going to begin our herringbone stitch. For herringbone, we're going to be thinking of this as 2 rows of 2. Here's our first row of herringbone and our second row of herringbone. Coming out the top here, we're going to add 1 11/0 and 1 8/0 C bead. The 11/0s on the outside are going to cause a curvature to the out as the 8s fill in and have more space on the interior. Having an 11 and an 8 now on your thread and needle, sew down through bead number 5. You add 2 beads on with herringbone, sew down the second bead of that row, and sew up the first bead of the next row of your herringbone. So we're sewing up through bead number 3, splitting beads 3 and 4 there from our original 8/0s that we added. Here we're going to do the opposite, adding an 11 second and the 8 first, and then we're going to sew down through bead number 2. That is going to officially be our first row of our herringbone stitch. I'm going to flip this in my hands, so that way I'm sewing again back towards the left-hand side. Just like we did previously, we're going to go from the 8/0 and we're going to step up into the last bead that we just added, which is going to be your 11/0 C bead. We're going to repeat the same thing, adding an 11 and an 8, sewing down through the 8, and you can see that gap there. That's our next row of our herringbone that we are going to sew up. Sew up through the 8/0 C bead of that row we just completed and added an 8 and an 11. Sew down through the 11 from that previous row and out. Make sure it's not twisted at all, you don't see any extra thread Once again, I'm going to flip it in my hand. This time the stop bead is towards the left. And I'm going to step up through the 11-0 and out that most recent row of my herringbone stitch. You can see that V already starting to happen. That's natural with herringbone. We're going to expand on that even more as we add in a bicone in the next one. So an 11 and an 8 get picked up. So down through the 8 after coming out the 11. In that interior space, we're going to add one of our 4mm bicones, and then we're going to sew up through the 8 C bead from the previous row. Coming out that 8 C bead, add an 8 and an 11, and sew down through the 11-0 on that side. As I'm doing so, once again, when I get to the left, I go ahead and flip my project so I'm coming out the right. Once again, stepping up so my thread and needle are coming out through the 11-0 C bead and ready to start my next row of my herringbone stitch. As you start the next row, you're coming out that 11. Once again, adding an 11 and an 8 and sewing down through the 8. This time we're going to add one 11, one 4mm, and another 11. Then we're going to hop over to the other side of the herringbone stitch, coming up through the 8. And once again, adding in an 8 and an 11. Going down through the 11, or the second bead in that herringbone group. From here again, I'm going to switch in my hands, sew back up through the 11. That last bead that you're coming out of, or that you added rather, is always the one that you start out of. From here, add an 11 and an 8, sew through the 8, which is the second bead there. Make sure those are laying nicely on the side. And here in the middle, we're going to add a second row of seed beads going into that same 4mm bicone. So we're going to add 1 and 2 11-0s, sew through that same bicone. Do the same thing on the other side, 1 and 2 11-0s, and then through the next 8. When you're out through that next 8, add your next portion of herringbone with an 8 and an 11, and sew down through the 11-0 on the opposite side. As I'm doing so, always I'm turning my hand so that way my thread is on the right hand side, and I'm going to be sewing off through to the left. Go again through and step up that last bead that you just added onto your thread. You can see that nice V starting to happen and a widening of your seed beads. Here we're going to go in and we're going to create the next one, adding 1 11-0 and 3 of our 4mm bicones followed by 11-0. So here we're going 1 11, 1 8 to complete that row of our herringbone stitch. And then we're going to exaggerate the middle with one of our 11-0s followed by 3 4mm bicones followed by 1 11-0 and into the 8 on the opposite side. When you're there, go ahead and pull the thread and needle through, and you're going to add again your 8 and your 11 to the opposite side of that herringbone stitch. I'm holding it down here so you can see it, but normally you're coming out a little bit on the left hand side there. You're going to sew back through that second bead in that herringbone through the 11-0 always. Once again, turning the project here, we are going to step up through the 11-0 seed bead that we just added last. And like we did previously where we kind of shared seed beads going through the bicone, we're going to do the same thing here using 2 11-0s going through those same 3mm bicone, those 3 4mm bicones. So I'm going to add an 11 and an 8, starting that next row of my herringbone stitch going through the 11, or through the 8 rather. Add 1 and 2 11-0 seed beads. Sew through all 3 of those 4mm bicones. Mirror that on the other side, adding 1 and 2 11s. Sew through the next 8-0 seed bead on the second side of that herringbone. And once again, do an 8 and an 11 and down through the 11-0 of that herringbone stitch. Turn it to the side here, and you're ready for your next one. So you can see how it's really starting to fan out here. The next portion, we're going to add the last of our herringbone here, and we're going to add a collection of 2 seed beads and 5 of our 4mm bicones. So now you can see I've added my 11 and 8 on the side just as I'm continuing with my herringbone stitch, followed by the collection of 2 11s, 4mm, 5 of the 4s, 2 more 11s, and then once again over to the 8/0 on the opposite side of the herringbone stitch. From here, add your 8 and your 11 to finish it off, and then back through your 11/0 seed bead. That finishes off that bottom drapage of these beautiful earrings coming up with the seed beads here. From here, we are going to go back up the design of these seed beads, but we're going to reinforce the side and just add a little bit of seed bead on the outer edge. So just as if we were going through and adding another row of our herringbone stitch, we're going to go up the 11/0 seed bead and just pick up one 11/0 rather than an 11 and an 8. Going through that same 8/0 seed bead here, we're going to also go through the next one and sew through all those crystals and those 2 11s on the side. Go the whole way over to the opposite side, go through those 2 8mm there that pretty much line up perfectly along the side here. Come on out and add one more 11/0 before traveling up that whole exterior row of 11/0s on side number 1 of your herringbone stitch. As we do so then, we get to the top of our herringbone, and we're going to add some beads between our ladder stitch rows of our 8/0 seed beads. Make sure when you come out the top here that you do not, I repeat, do not sew through that stop bead, because that stop bead will be coming off of the design. From here, we're in between those 2 rows of our herringbone stitch and those 4 starts of our ladder. We're going to add one 8/0 seed bead and drop down the second row of the ladder stitch, those 8/0s and out. Go up through that the third row of the ladder stitch through those last 2 8s, and once again add another 8/0 seed bead and down through those beads. That creates almost like little handles here on the top, which we are going to use a 4mm bead on the top of to keep going with our fan design. From here, I want you to weave your needle and thread back once again through that ladder stitch towards the outer edge, going down through the 2 8s, up through them, back down through here, and then up through that last row. When you exit through the last row, I want you to pick up 2 of your 11/0 seed beads, sew through the 8 that you added along the top here, add your last 4mm bead, sew through the second 8/0 seed bead, and that's going to position that 4mm right in the middle and bring some color to the top. From here, we're going to go up towards the top here, adding on our wire guard, down through the side, and back down through the 8. So we're kind of going in a figure 8 along the top here. Along the top, we need 1, 2, and 3 of our 11/0 seed beads. Go ahead and grab your wire guard, going up through the one side of the wire guard, coming down through the opposite side of the wire guard. If you've never used one before, it's a little U channel, and it makes it look really polished and finished at the top of your ear wire here. You have 2 little tubes on the side of it, and then almost like a horseshoe there in the top along the edges. Pull that down next to the design, add 1, 2, and 3 more 11/0s. Go back in to the opposite side of 8, 4mm 8, and out. That's going to bring that wire guard as well as the top of the earring back to center. Add 2 more 11/0 seed beads to mirror the other side. Come down through those first 2 beads of the ladder stitch. If you want to, you can go back through now, reinforce along the sides here, going back through the wire guard and back down through. The last thing you're going to do is bring your thread and needle once again through that ladder stitch, up those middle two, down the third row, up the fourth row, turning your beads to the outer edge, flipping it over, taking off your wire guard, and tying those two thread ends together to end these little fans. The reason I call them angel fan is because I think you could really make a great holiday design with this, using it as a little angel skirt. If you do, make sure that you post pictures and also leave comments here in the comment section. It really helps out other Potomac beaders that may be watching. Any change-ups that you do, any size variations, any questions that you may have, type those away. Somebody may have the same thing, and we can all solve it together as a community. Go ahead and burn down those thread edges then. Burn them flat against the project here after doing a square knot, right over left, left over right. Last thing to do to make your pair of earrings is to go in here and open up whatever ear wire you are going to attach. I have the lever back here, so that way they can flow in my ear, maybe as I dance the night away. Opening the wire by twisting to the side rather than pulling back. Placing your earring onto that piece, and then bringing it back close by twisting it back into its position. That's going to finish up that fun design of these angel fan earrings. Thanks so much for joining me to create these angel fan earrings. They are really a great Art Deco look, and I can't wait to see lots of different colors in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. So make sure to post your pair so we can all see the different colorways. Remember, if you haven't yet, also hit that little subscribe button so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. If you want to check out our crystal selection and our 8.0 and 11.0 Miyuki colors, go ahead and look below the video in the description. We have a link there for you. That link will take you right to the website where we list exact counts and quantities that you need to make these earrings. Remember, if you haven't yet already, again, hit that little subscribe button and stay tuned for more inspirational designs from us here at Potomac Beads.